We are, 9 weeks through the season. Everybody is now down to 2 games left in their season, and I think the ECC picture is coming into focus a little bit, though that focus resembles a little bit of a Monet. Art reference right here on the power rankings. So the first thing before we get into this week's power rankings is a thank you and then a mild shameless plug. The thank you is clearly this segment, as well as the one I do with Mike DeMauro, is resonating with the people in the community because we're hearing a lot of feedback about it. And that means the world to me because, when we're in this beautiful new studio here at the New Day building, sometimes we wonder, are we reaching people? So, whether it's kids literally coming off the field after games or at practice, or parents in the stands, or people, just the fact that you're paying attention and that this is causing you to talk about it and that you care about our opinions, all extremely meaningful to me. That's my thank you. My shameless plug is if you'd like to be the sponsor of this segment, you can be. I'm offering it up out there. If there's anybody out there that's like, hey, I want my name attached to the power rankings or to Mike DeMauro and my segment, reach out to me privately. You can find me in my email. You can find me at Facebook. You can find me around and say, hey, I'd love to be the first ever sponsor of the Game Day Power Rankings segment. Just throwing that out there. Shameless plug.
So were you surprised by any of the results this week?
I was not surprised by the winners and losers.
So I was going to say the same thing.
There were 3 scores that were very surprising to me. Now, that's saying there would have been 4 had I only seen the Killingly NFA score. If I'd only seen that, people might be going, really? NFA scored 27 points against Killingly? And in fairness, they were all well-earned points. But I think if you look at the context of the game, it was never about that. And I also, when we talk about Killingly, I'm going to throw a asterisk into the Killingly season that is about the asterisk being, here's how they might be vulnerable, which we haven't talked about. So that score would have surprised me. The scores that did surprise me, the Waterford-Wyndham score surprised me. I really thought this was going to be a get-healthy game for Waterford. I thought after that rough week they had, Wyndham had been struggling a lot, so the Waterford-Wyndham score surprised me. That's one.
And how about Ledyard and Woodstock Academy, totaling 100 and some points?
So I actually saw that score on the CIAC's site and actually had to go and reach out to find out if it was accurate. I thought it was inputted incorrectly.
Somebody laid on the keyboard a little too
I
long.
was like, that can't be right. Like, that's one of the, maybe they took a basketball score from last year. Honestly, that's a basketball score. And I was blown away by that. 58-45. That score surprised me. I think the other score that surprised me a little bit was the Fitch score because I thought that game was going to be really close, and it was for a while, and it kind of got away from them. But, yeah, some of the scores were a little surprising, not the results. And thus comes this week's power rankings and not a lot of changes because there wasn't a lot of movement. But let me ask you this, see how good you are. In the ECC, how many teams are 8-0?
1.
That is correct. That's the easy one. How many teams are 7-1 or 6-2?
2.
That is correct. Griswold and Ledyard. Bit of a trick question. They're both 6-2.
Yeah,
there are no 7-1
no
teams.
one-loss teams.
No. How many teams are 5-3?
Are there any?
There are 2 5-3 teams.
Okay.
Waterford and Valley. Everyone else, how many 4-4 teams are there? 6. 6 4-4 teams. There's also a couple of 3-5s, and it's. I don't want to say it's a league of parity, but it doesn't bode well overall. But that other than those teams that are 8-0 and 6-2, everyone's right at the middle.
And we were excited to get into this stretch of the season where the teams start playing divisional games to see who is going to rise to the top. And I mean, a couple of teams did rise to the top, but then like there's not a clear hierarchy necessarily in the divisions as teams keep beating each other.
Well, the best example is the Woodstock, Ledyard, Waterford, where Woodstock beat Waterford, Waterford beat Ledyard, Ledyard beat Woodstock, and every tiebreaker that they have within the ECC is the same. So it's going to have to go to the PowerPoints at the end of the year to determine who the Division II champion is.
We're not just going to hand out banners to 3 out of 4 teams?
I hope not. Division II ECC champions has a good ring to it. So let's start at the number 1 spot with the no-brainer. Killingly remains number 1. They're 8-0, 63 points again on the board this week against NFA. They finish up with Waterford and Woodstock, which they should win both. They should finish undefeated. They should remain the number 2, if not number 1 team in the state. They should finish number 1 in their class. All of that's true. Puncher's chance for either Waterford or Woodstock?
I don't think so. Not based on anything we've seen from Killingly.
So let's turn it to the positives from this Friday night. First of all, shout out to Killingly for remaining the pinnacle of not only performance, but of environment for a game. This week with Military Appreciation Week and the first ever game day flyover.
I know.
I mean, come on. They had a teacher from Killingly, flew a Cessna over the field and perfectly timed.
Timed it perfectly. I don't know how the military pilots with all the technology do it, let alone someone on a Cessna on a radio or something. Wow.
You heard that right. Not only did they do military appreciation where they honored veterans by name, acknowledging them on the field before the game, the players came through the stands with flags, American flags. It was a really beautiful ceremony that they had, and it was culminated with a flyover. So again, to Killingly, and Coach Neal said it perfectly, right? These guys that they honored, these people, these men and women. You know, we use words like sacrifice. A lot of military terms often get put onto football players and football teams. A little bit of sort of perspective for his kids about sacrifice and, you know, what it means. I thought that was a good perspective by him.
So I know this is more the territory of you and Mike later in the week, but you talked about Killingly number 2, potentially number 1. And is there a legitimate path or argument for Killingly to be number 1 in the state?
Only if New Canaan loses. If New Canaan finishes the year undefeated, as the number 1 team in double L or in L, they can't drop out of it. But if they lose and Killingly goes undefeated, wins the state championship, probably through a Daniel Hand, I absolutely, based on results and who they've beaten and how they've beaten them, 100%.
So we can agree, right, that the transitive property of win-loss comparison is a futile effort.
Correct.
Is that going to stop me from doing it right now?
No.
All right. So trying to find some kind of comparison, and admittedly, this is me/us being ECC homers. So Killingly beat Massac 42-7. Mm-hmm. You said that score could have been
whatever they wanted it to.
Could have been a lot
35-0 at halftime, yes.
So Massac's couple of losses against top teams, lost by a touchdown to Bunnell 21-14, lost by a touchdown to Darien 28-21. So Killingly versus Bunnell, also by that transitive property, that means nothing. Killingly ought to beat Bunnell by a wide margin. Mm-hmm. New Canaan, a 27-7 win over Bunnell. So by linking together that spurious chain of games, I feel like there's an argument that Killingly deserves comparison with New Canaan. They don't play the same strength of schedule, but in the past, I think that Killingly, as a smaller Class S, double S school, was easily kind of poo-pooed by saying, like, oh, if they played a double L team, there would be no chance. I'm not sure you can make the argument this year that Killingly would have no chance against an L or a double L school.
I agree. And it's why, though, they need to beat Hand for a state championship, because Hand has that statewide credibility. They've played teams on their schedule that merit that big win this past week over Fairfield Prep. Like, they have to go through Hand to do it. It's also where you wish, if it was an undefeated New Canaan and an undefeated Killingly, wouldn't we love to see it and just see what that would be like? I will say that not to be lost in the shuffle, by the way, Hayden Allard's state record, 6th career, pick 6. And I'm going someplace with this. I mentioned an asterisk. When I asked Coach Chad Neal after the game, why'd you give up 27 points? Like, is it hard to stay focused? And he said, because my defense is on the field all the time. Because my offense, they score like this, and they all play both ways. So Killingly giving up big plays on defense could very well be a function of both being on the field a lot and being on the field all the time. So the Allards, as well as Mackeys, and a lot of these guys are on the field, offense and defense, and defensively it's probably a 75 to 80% split with their offense.
And so is that then an argument for the New Canaans and the Greenwiches of the world that may be able to have 2 complete units?
It's an argument that if they were to play, that's where the advantage goes. I think Killingly's offense matches up with anybody. I think defensively, we've seen little bits of weaknesses at times in their defense. They've given up points, but they've given up points when their offense scores so quickly that their defense has to immediately get back out there. So in one game, I don't know that it matters, but I think that's where the big difference between, we talked about resources, being able to play, 2 different teams essentially, whereas Killingly's probably got 8 guys going both ways.
So neither of us has a vote in the state poll. But to throw a hypothetical out there, Killingly beats Hand in the final by an easy margin, like they've won most of the rest of their games. New Canaan also goes undefeated, but does not play a top 10 team in the state tournament. Is there an argument at the end there for more people to vote Killingly number 1, or does New Canaan have to lose? That's the only way.
I feel like, to be true to my own previous, sort of criteria, New Canaan would have to lose. I can't have a team at number 1 win their game, because once you get to the state championship, it's just about winning. It doesn't matter who. All the strength of schedule stuff goes out the window in the state championship game. So if they were number 1, having gone through those teams, and they win no matter who they play, they stay 1. It's an unfortunate. Could I see a scenario in which you vote a tie at number 1 between those two, just because the voters are split? I could see that scenario happening, but I feel like for me to say Killingly should be number 1 is a homer vote. But I think this is where it gets tricky. It's a homer vote because I've seen enough of them to believe they're the best team in the state. It's the same reason that works against them with all the people down in Fairfield County who says, I don't need to see Killingly. I've seen enough of these teams to vote New Canaan number 1. So I feel like a vote for Killingly in those circumstances would be a homer vote, but it would not necessarily mean that it's not fair.
So someone out there is voting Killingly number 1, and it's not Mike DeMoro.
That's right.
So I'd be interested to know and hear that argument. But let's move on.
Okay. Number 2 stays at number 2. They had probably a more contested game than maybe they hoped for. Griswold at 6-2, 34-21 over a very game Stonington team. But at the end of it all, Griswold prevails. Relatively comfortable victory. With East Lyme and Valley as their final 2 teams, they will be a favorite in both of them. Those are 2 games that neither will be easy, but they are the favorite in both. And they're going to need to win both, I think, to get themselves into the postseason. But they will be an interesting team if they can finish 8-2 and get into the postseason.
And I think there's an interesting parallel here to the statewide race where we've got the bigger, more established school in the number 1 slot and the smaller upstart school. Fortunately, for our purposes here, we've had that head-to-head matchup, and there's a clear winner.
This is where the first 4 teams on the sheet actually works itself out pretty well because coming in at number 3 or staying in at number 3 is the Ledyard Colonels with the basketball score. So my understanding was Jackson Favory hit a buzzer beater down the stretch, or hit a 3 down the stretch that got them out to that 58-45 victory. They took the press off late. That's right, 58-45. 6-2. Ledyard, if you look at their losses, one of them comes right above them to Griswold, which is why they slot in there. The other one comes to Waterford, which I know they wish they had gotten back. But Ledyard's last 2 games, Stonington and Fitch, I would say the same thing I said about Griswold. They will be the favorite in both of those games. But if anybody thinks either of those is a game where Ledyard can't hiccup, and man, that Ledyard-Fitch Thanksgiving game, not only might it be played in an hour and 15 minutes, but that has the chance. If you want to look at that score with Woodstock, that Fitch game might have a chance to be pretty good like that too.
And let's highlight again the season that Jackson Favory is having at a school where the list of great running backs that has come out of there,
yes,
or just the list of great running backs that we have seen on game day,
yes,
is huge. To go out and set a school record for yards and tie a school record for touchdowns. A great season for him.
Yeah, it's the original record that I had seen was actually set by Jamal Johnson against Ledyard, and it's subsequently been eclipsed by players, including kids at Ledyard. So Ledyard has become one of the schools where it seems like every couple of years there's a running back who, threatens these numbers, and Favory has now put himself into a very short list of great Ledyard running backs. Staying at number 4, NFA, off a loss, because true to my everything I've said, Killingly results do not get you pushed down the poll. They can get you pushed up, and I would suggest NFA showed me some things in that game that the one thing that I've seen from them that really was an issue was their offense. I thought healthy with my blessing Maddox Moore and Cleary, and with Aaron Driscoll throwing the ball. Like all of a sudden I was like, this offense doesn't look too bad, and they actually ran the ball. Chad Neal said they're going to be on film because NFA pushed them around and ran the ball. They just couldn't defensively, and they're a good defensive. They had no answer for Killingly's offense. But I thought NFA showed me enough. They're 4-4 now, so I think they're the best of the 4-4 teams. I also think that with 2 games remaining against Wyndham and New London, they will be heavy favorites in both of those. And at 6-4, by our initial glance, and Mike DeMora and I will go more into it later in the week, but by initial glance, they have a real good chance to get in.
So the score was lopsided, but no other team outside of Bishop Hendricken week 1 has put up that many points against a Killingly team that has been blowing everyone away.
And if you looked at it, it was mostly big plays set up by them running the football effectively, big offensive line. And I thought there was enough there. It really, if you look at NFA's season, right, they're going to look at a game against Xavier that they absolutely feel they should have won. Granted, they got a win against Fitch that they maybe shouldn't have had, right? So overall, they're probably at about what they're supposed to be, but they're still the most dangerous of those teams, I think.
And if NFA, just again, what a great story if they finish out the season and make it into the playoffs. Starting
0-3 and a lot of, all kinds of changes going on in there and injuries, and that they've really been a very resilient team. So shout out to what's going on at NFA. Staying at 5, Fitch, despite a very disappointing loss. And why Fitch at 4-4? Because the teams that are coming in on the other side of them, they beat. So if you look at Fitch's strength of schedule, they've got one of the strongest strengths of schedule out there. Their losses have been predominantly to very good teams. Granted, they could have done themselves a big favor had they won that game against West Haven. But with games against New London and Ledyard, it looks like if Fitch wins out and goes 6-4, they also have a very good chance of getting in, which does make that Fitch-Ledyard game look more and more like a play-in game rather than we thought there might be a chance where they were both in. Right now, I can guarantee Fitch can't lose that game and get in. But if they win, it could be a win and in. Whether or not Ledyard could absorb that loss, I don't know. There's just too many things going on right now. But, I think I feel very comfortable in my top 5. And I think the results can justify those top 5 being where they are.
I mean, you asked me last week which one of these top 5 teams had the greatest chance of dropping out, and I picked Fitch mostly because of the strength of their schedule the rest of the season, not because I think they don't belong there.
Yeah.
I think I wonder, does that strength of schedule prepare them to win down the stretch in these last 2 games?
Well, we'll have them Saturday, live on game day at New London High School. And quite frankly, as much as I love my Whalers, that needs to be a game that Fitch goes out and wins decisively to get them. They cannot have one of those error-plagued, penalty-plagued games where it's close in the fourth quarter, because New London's young team will bite you if you let them stay in that game. They will bite you, especially at home. It would be a rivalry game like this. So Fitch needs to go out and win that game decisively to get them into Thanksgiving healthy and prepared and make that game winnable for them on Thanksgiving as well. Bumping up from number 7 to number 6, the Waterford Lancers, 5-3. Why is a 5-3 team behind 2 4-4 teams? Because they didn't beat Fitch, and 5-3 is not decisively better than 4-4. And quite frankly, I find 28-12 over Wyndham to be lackluster. Wyndham's been getting beat up pretty bad this year by a lot of teams, and Waterford, off of that awful week they had, I would have thought this, like I said, I thought this would have been a get-right game for them. And 28-12, just lackluster. Now, Waterford, Killingly and East Lyme to finish the year, and they're 5-3. Every single possible remaining record is on the table, except I don't think there's any real way they can beat Killingly. It would take something so statistically unpredictable for them to beat Killingly, but they can't roll into Thanksgiving against East Lyme thinking that game's not going to be the epic rivalry matchup that it always is.
Yeah, and in some ways the games on the table for Thanksgiving are all really, really appetizing.
So there's a really good chance that NFA is playing on Thanksgiving for a playoff spot. At least one of the 2 teams in Fitch Ledyard is going to be playing for a playoff spot, possibly both. And Waterford East Lyme is always incredibly competitive, and right now they're both in possibility for the postseason.
Yeah, a lot of other things would have to happen, but that game, out of all of them, even when there is no playoff spot on the line, it is an exciting game, is a fun one to watch.
Yeah.
There's a good, healthy rivalry. In those kids have played each other for years and years in multiple sports. They all know each other, and like they all circle that game. Now,
the likelihood is that East Lyme loses to Griswold and Killingly beats Waterford, and they roll into that game where it means nothing other than rivalry, and it still becomes an incredible, because then they'd both be playing to be over 500, and other things would matter. But Thanksgiving Day game should be a lot of fun. Coming in at number 7, bumping up from number 8, East Lyme. East Lyme's one of the few teams that, it's a good win, 17-7 over Stratford. Stratford's not a great team, but it's anytime you go out of conference like that late in the year and you get a win, which is something, for example, that Fitch wasn't able to do, and East Lyme did it and puts them at 500. Now they finish Griswold Waterford. Every record is possible left for East Lyme as well. And so, is 6-4 possible with them even having a chance at a state berth? Yes. Is 4-6 possible? Yes. So East Lyme right now, though, did what they needed to do, got that win. We'll keep them there at 7.
And that's a game that we circled back in the beginning of the season as a potentially interesting game between East Lyme and Griswold, where you've got Griswold, clearly the top team in Division III, has played a lot of teams that they should beat. They went into the game as a heavy favorite for a lot of their games. Couldn't beat the top team in Division I, but now here they are against a bigger school, a school that has played a more difficult schedule and has a worse record. I don't know how to pick a favorite in that game. You would I guess on paper you say Griswold, but I don't know.
Encouraging in the win for East Lyme was Hollywood Brown, downtown Brown, got himself a touchdown catch. And I think for them to win, for them to beat a team like Griswold, their offense is going to have to score points, and I think that's a very fortuitous from them. Ascending to number 8 from the 10 spot, the Valley Panthers. How did that happen? Well, it was close. Bacon, as been the case all too often for them, shot themselves in the foot with some late penalties, but a 27-24 win. I said last week that Bacon Valley game was a play-in game for the power rankings, and it turned out that it was, but I also lied a little bit. Valley's going to be in at number 8. Now, listen, they've got Amistad this week, which is a game they absolutely should win. And if they do, it guarantees them above 500 season, which would be remarkable. And it would send them into Thanksgiving. If they were 6-3 heading into Thanksgiving Day against Griswold with a chance to both make the postseason and be a spoiler, of Griswold season. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything more from them. They'll be an underdog to Griswold no matter what. But, hey, shout out to Valley for what has been a very, very good year.
Yeah, and that's been, from the start of the season, one of my favorite stories. It's a little bit out of our range. We did go up and do a print feature on that team. But to take a co-op with multiple schools and fold them into another school, and obviously there's you've got a little bit going for you just in increasing the number of kids, but a new head coach and a new system and integrating kids from a bunch of different schools, credit to them for what they've been able to achieve.
And I want to let everyone know that everyone thinks, they hear co-op and they think, well, why you should be good? You're getting the kids from 5 schools. It's a lot more challenging than you think, especially in a sport like football, to do a successful co-op, because let's just say, you're 2 towns over. That means that you might have a half an hour bus ride to get to the school that you need to be at football practice on, which means every day you need to hop a bus, get to the school, go through a football practice, which is hard enough, and then get back to your home. That's not easy. And if your school isn't one that has a traditional football attachment to it, like if you didn't grow up in the youth programs and stuff, it's not necessarily a big draw. If you look at I'll just use the Bacon Academy Lyman Co-op because we had talked with Coach Ladiga about this. They might get 6 to 8 Lyman kids. Of those 6 to 8, it's almost never a quarterback who can run and throw the football or a running back. It's usually a couple of linemen, a couple of special teams guys, kids who want to try football. It takes a long time to build a co-op. For them to jump into it this year and be successful, it's really, really impressive.
And they don't have that built-in advantage of a football culture, a common shared culture coming up from youth.
Right.
So you think about Ledyard. They've played Ledyard youth football. You think about Killingly Brooklyn, where they run the same plays coming up.
Yeah.
Ledyard, you walk out the back door of the school, and the field is right there. You've got support from the town.
Right.
And now, you're playing at Plainfield. You've got kids coming from Putnam, Ellis Tech, and Turtelot, I think. And so just putting together that, not just the mechanics of making everybody learn the system, but putting together that winning culture.
Yeah. Where
the kids are not all going to school together, seeing each other every day. That is not easy. And so credit to them.
Sliding to number 9 from the number 6 spot, the Bears. Stonington, tough loss, 34-21 to Griswold. Stonington in a tough spot. Ledyard and Westerly, their last 2 games. They will be significant underdogs in both. Doesn't mean they couldn't win both because they're still a dangerous team. But Stonington, who started the year a little rough, then got their footing under them, now they enter kind of just of a tough stretch in their schedule, finishing with those teams. That 8-6 loss to Bacon in the monsoon is really going to be the one that they look at that really they'll circle as man if only. They absolutely have a chance against Ledyard and a chance against Westerly, but they're the underdogs in both of those 2 games.
Yeah, and I mean that's a product of this is maybe a rebuilding year. last year for Stonington, they had a great, talented senior class,
Right.
And propelled them to 2 really good seasons. And so naturally, you get younger, you get less experienced, you're going to take a little bit of a step back. And because of that, you might lose one of those close games. The weather didn't help. Throw everything out when you're playing in that weather. So I don't think this is an awful result for Stonington. We saw a lot of good things, and they're an exciting team at times. They're a dangerous team. It would be nice. We would love to see them punch above their weight sometime and surprise the team.
Exactly. That's well said. Exactly. So staying at number 10, Bacon Academy. That loss is kind of indicative of where they're at, right? They lost 27-24 to the team I put at number 8. They're competitive against just about everybody. They've got to find ways to win. It would be a program win if they could find a way to beat Nonawag this week, who's undefeated and sitting at the number 2 spot behind Killingly. And they finished with Ram, and Ram I don't think has won a game this year. So they could finish 6-4. They're going to look at their loss to Montville when they were beat up and had lost 2 starters from the previous game against Griswold. They're going to look at that game and say, man, that was a game we wish we had back. So Bacon, because they're 4-4, I kept them in the top 10. But I want to talk a little bit about the teams that are on the outside looking in, if you will. And I want to start with New London, who beat Bacon. But at 3-5, very difficult loss this week. They show their youth often, but you will see it. If you haven't seen it, you'll see it sooner rather than later. One of the great plays of the year from the New London game, a 100-plus yard run. And that's all I'm going to tease for that one. But yeah, New London has a chance if they can find a way to beat either Fitch or NFA. That would be a remarkable way to finish their season. But the Whalers are definitely building a culture just on the outside looking in. Shout out to Montville for their second win of the season, beating Amistad, and they are now 2-6. And I mentioned Woodstock. I wanted so badly to put 2-6 Woodstock into the top 10 just because I really think if we were looking at a pure 10 best teams, they are one of the 10 best teams. They just haven't been able to get the wins, other than that win over Waterford that is necessary. But that I wanted to put them in the top 10 just for scoring 45 points and losing to Ledger this week.
Yeah, and I think that's another team similar to Stonington where they just didn't quite pull through in a couple of those games where you would expect a better team to win. They're a team that so this is interesting to me. You predicted when I asked you, would Bacon be in your end of season top 10, and you said no. Mm-hmm. It seems like there is a path for Bacon to stay in this top 10.
Well, what'll be interesting is if they lose to Nonawag and beat Ram and finish at 5-5, it's going to depend on what happens to everybody else. But yeah, if they beat Nonawag, no matter what they do against Ram, I'm going to keep them in my top 10.
Because of the teams out of the top 10, New London has got 2 very difficult games that probably you'd consider them an underdog in both.
Yes.
And Montville and Wyndham are going to play each other.
Mm-hmm. As well as Montville having to play Woodstock, I believe, right?
Yeah. So everything's on the table, but I think things maybe are looking a little better for Bacon than we thought.
Yeah. They have a real chance. So, all right. My question for Peter Huoppi. Take a look at my top 10 and answer the following. How many teams will make the postseason out of those 10? You don't have to say who, just how many.
4.
And I happen to think they're the top 4 teams there in the power rankings. I would agree. Team most likely out of the 6 to 10 to surprise us in the last 2 weeks.
East Lyme.
I think that's fair too. Saturday, live from New London High School, we got New London and Fitch in that rivalry game on game day. We mentioned we'll be doing Montville and Wyndham, and a chance for those two teams to get some run time on game day. And then our Thanksgiving Day game is still percolating right now based on where the teams are. Again, thank you to everybody for embracing this segment. And again, if you want to be a sponsor of it, just reach out to me. But more importantly, to wrap a little bow on it, I think that the ECC's parity is good, regardless of how they fit statewide. I think the parity of the ECC is very good. It's made for each week to be very, very interesting. Outside of Killingly just doing its thing, everyone else on that list has either won a game we were surprised by or lost a game that we were surprised by. So that's kind of a cool thing.
And it kind of parallels what we're seeing statewide also, don't you think? It was sort of surprising to scroll through the playoff rankings and say, there's going to be a bunch of 3-loss and 4-loss teams getting into the playoffs. And some of that is the number of playoff teams, which we have taken issue with in the past. But the other is that, there's maybe just a little bit more parity down below. We've seen statewide top 10s in the past where we're looking at 4 or 5 undefeated schools.
And there are still some teams like Berlin, Nottawag, right, who are undefeated. There are others. But I think, to your point, not only is it the number of teams at the bottom of the things that might be around 500, there's 2 teams in the conversation for best team in the state, and that's it. No one's raising anyone else's name when it comes to the top 2 teams.
Someone's voting for Windsor.
I get it, but someone also didn't vote for Pedro, so, if you know what I mean. And I'm talking about Napoleon Dynamite, not the Red Sox. But yeah, realistically, there's 2 teams being talked about as the best team in the state. And at this point in the season, there's usually 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And we're seeing 2. So definitely more parity out there. Later this week, Mike DeMora and I will sit back. We'll go back through those rankings again and see how they've changed for the CIAC playoff brackets. But this time, we will make some definitive picks on who's going to make it, who's not going to make it. And in the meantime, let us know where you want us to be on Thanksgiving Day amongst the big 3. I know Stonington and Westerly is a great rivalry. I know there's other games in the mix, but of the big 3 between Waterford and East Lyme, New London and NFA, and Fitch and Ledger, just let us know where you want us to be on Thanksgiving Day.